Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Well, we're going to question one thing. Would America be better off if reparations had been paid? And my answer is absolutely, it would have been better off, even if this war happened and we had reparations. The impact of all the inflation would not be nearly as bad, and America would have money circulating. There would be new businesses, which means more revenue in the economy. Our people would be starting our own schools, businesses, and we would be hiring employees. So the job market would have a boom. And, not to mention, we would probably even have our own hospital that we could exclusively go to with our doctors. So, yes, it would be better off, but because of racism, it can never be. Racism is the reason why America is falling apart today. And it is going to be the full downfall of America. But the hate is so deep, they can't see that that very thing is taking them down. So it's not our problem to fix what's wrong with America because we didn't break it. So if anything needs to be turned around, it needs to be them folks because we don't have our reparations. And we already said we were sitting everything out. And that's what we need to continue to do. Yes, we all see what's happening to America, but we certainly didn't do this to America. It is white people's responsibility to clean up this mess because they are the ones that created it. You were the ones that ran out there and insisted on putting Donald Trump in office. You were the ones that didn't want the country to have free health care. You were the ones that did not want everybody to have a fair opportunity in this country. So no, you don't get to look at us and ask for help. No, we didn't destroy it and we should not have to fix it. So yes, America would have been a better place if we had reparations. America not only would be a better place, but America would be thriving if we would have had reparations. Think about it. 40 to 50 million people with reparations money. Yeah, the economy would have been booming. It would have been booming. So, definitely a missed opportunity. And being that you didn't want to make restitution for the wrongs that have been done to my people, this is why judgment is going to be that much greater for you. And it is. Look, I just watched a video of it was a 60-year-old white woman, and she was crying and said she hated being in America. She don't recognize this country anymore. And she said she's so broke, she can't even afford to get a passport to leave. So she's pretty much stuck in this situation because she just don't have the money like she used to. So she's broke and can't get a passport because she says she don't have the money. So yeah, life is changing rapidly for these folks, y'all. It really is. I see it every day online when I'm looking through videos to decide which ones I'm going to show. And I see it every day. I see them every day crying and whining, and they're young people complaining because they can't move out of their parents' house because apartments are too expensive. And They got jobs, but their jobs aren't paying them enough money. So it's bad. It is bad for them. I think in my whole life, this is the worst I've ever seen them struggle financially. The ones that normally you would never see struggle are now struggling. And many of them are looking at us saying, "Well, why aren't you guys we trust me, we're struggling too." But here's the difference. You know why we're not falling apart? Because we're used to hard times. You've subjected us to hard times the entire time. So for us, it's like weathering the storm. We know we just got to weather the storm. For y'all, it's new territory. That's why you can't handle it and you're crying and falling apart. And it's not just the women. I've seen the men breaking down and crying on videos because they can't take care of their families. They got young children at home, a wife, and they don't have enough money to take care of their families. So, yeah, for y'all, yeah. But for us, we've been living through hard times for centuries now. So for us, it's like, okay, well, we'll get through this the best that we can. We may not be able to eat the most elaborate meal, but we'll definitely eat, even if it's nothing but rice and beans. We gonna eat, okay? We gonna eat. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, y'all, please give me a one if you can see my screen. Mhm. Yeah, well, actually, when you really reflect back, they're the ones that was really in the worst position because really we saw it during the lockdown when they were no longer working and before the stimulus kicked in, you should have seen them carrying on online. We were just sitting back and watching. Oh man, well, is the government going to help us? What are they going to do for us? We need help. I need help. I got to pay this. I got to do that. Oh my God, my job is just not that. I need help. Yeah, they were all over the videos doing that. And I said, "Oh, I thought y'all didn't need the government." The same people that ran around talking about they didn't need the government were the first ones hollering for the government to help them. Go figure. All right, y'all. Thank you for the ones. I appreciate it.
The white people's whose stance is that they don't want to be held responsible or accountable for what their white ancestors did when referring to slavery probably had the most despicable and violent ancestors because, according to epigenetics, the lack of empathy derived from that. Those white people, I'll absolutely never have a back and forth conversation with them because they're literally embodying a lack of empathy. There's no point in re explaining slavery or what happened or any of those things. However, you could catch this smoke about Jim Crow laws. Ancestors typically refers to 3+ generations ago. Jim Crow laws are only 1 and 2 generations removed. You actually probably met your family members who were voting for and enforcing Jim Crow laws because they were your parents and your grandparents. It didn't end until the 1960s on paper. And even after, on paper, Jim Crow laws ended in America, those practices still live. They still live today. Racial segregation is in the culture of America because of the Jim Crow era. I would argue that the Jim Crow era had more of an impact on the current state of being of the black Americans as a majority than slavery. The largest and most profitable banks, corporations, and universities were founded or started during Jim Crow era. They capitalized off of racial segregation. And that has negatively impacted Black people the most. This is where the conversation of reparations, I mean, it is the most logical connection. This isn't a conversation about ancestors. Stop arguing with these people about slavery and start arguing with them about Jim Crow laws.
I've never owned anyone. My neighbors, as far as I know, have never been owned by anyone. But the people who say we don't owe any reparations for the Civil War are ignoring something really huge. Or maybe they just don't know. Some people already got reparations. White people. White enslavers were paid for losing their human property. The actual people who were raped, tortured, whipped, and sold, and worse, were promised land to get a fresh start after the war, but they got nothing. When slavery was abolished, Congress paid nearly $1 million, which is 30 million in today's bucks, to white enslavers as compensation for losing their property in a war they lost. If a freed person didn't hit the road fast enough, they risked being re-enslaved under new laws that were just workarounds for all these white people losing their slaves. After the Civil War ended, Union General Sherman set aside 400,000 acres of confiscated Confederate land for Black families to start new lives on, up to 40 acres each. The Army loaned out mules to help them work the land. That's where the phrase 40 acres and a mule comes from. Black people were already working some of this land when Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson became president. Well, Johnson reversed the order. He gave the land back to the same Confederates who had just tried to destroy the country. The freed people were evicted. So they made all these things into crimes that were non-crimes. They were things like, if a Black person didn't have a job, that was a crime. If a Black person couldn't prove that they had a job, that was a crime. You could get arrested for that and a lot of other ridiculous things. But once you were in jail, you could be leased out as labor for private profit. This system of convict leasing allowed white landowners and businesses to replace slavery with something just as violent, just as profitable as slavery. No wonder there are still Confederate flags all across the South. Even after slavery was abolished, Black Americans were not safe. Public lynchings became a regular threat. They were a form of terror used to keep free people in their place. They were planned events announced in advance so everybody could attend. They were held in broad daylight. White families brought their children to watch Black people being hanged, tortured, brutally murdered. It was a festival. People sold food. There were postcards made. People could buy postcards of the mutilated bodies hanging from trees and mail them in the mail or keep them as souvenirs. This country took care of Civil War criminals and punished the ones the war was supposed to free. And there was a lot more abuse I just can't fit into this video. Next time I'm going to talk about the stuff that happened in relation to the Great Depression and World War II. And then after that, I'll have one on civil rights, the era when I was growing up, how it all ties in to the racism that is part and parcel of our grand land today. White people, you especially need to get curious. Join me in this research, and you'll find that people are willing and able to come in with their education and their experience to help you learn. You just have to be open to it. We need to be willing to be uncomfortable
Do I think white people should have paid black people for reparations? Fucking yeah, absolutely I do. My ancestors undoubtedly took part in a very cruel and dehumanizing evil process by which we exploited the labor of black people in order to make us rich even centuries later. And the problem is that black people were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule, which, like, if you saw Kendra's performance, 40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. Most black families got nothing because Andrew Johnson revoked the executive order because he's an actual bitch. Black families had no other option than to work in sharecropping, which their labor was still exploited, or they were arrested for literally no reason, no offense at all, and taken to prison where they were also exploited for their labor. So yes, black families should have been compensated, and the economy, the United States would be a very different country today if reparations had actually happened. Because imagine being enslaved for decades of your life, freed at 50 years old. What do? You have no dollars to your name, no possessions. And that is why there's such an unequal distribution of wealth today, because it was intentionally withheld from black and brown people. So even today, I am pro reparations. I think the American government should be paying people out. Sorry.
You know what the craziest thing about reparations is to me? Is that it would actually save white people's souls. This is what I feel like white people don't understand. To be clear, this applies to any oppressor who's being asked to acknowledge and pay for its crime. On the topic of reparations, do white people in America really think that black people whose ancestors were enslaved care about a check? That's actually the craziest part about it. Black people are offering white people an opportunity to save their souls, and white people are turning it down. And this is all about karma. When you pay reparations, when you go through a process of reconciliation, you pay off your karmic debt. And before anyone fixes their mouth to say, that wasn't me, that was my great-great-great-grandparent, I think karma doesn't pass down through your bloodline. You don't think you're paying karmic debt for what your ancestors did? I actually personally believe that the entire concept of past life karma is simply us paying karma back for our ancestors. And now look at the state of the white collective in America. That depravity that we see today, whether it's things coming out in the Epstein files, whether it's people signing up for ICE to round up children, that depravity that you and your families and your systems and your collective is experiencing is because nobody has stepped up to pay your karmic debt. And that depravity sinks its teeth into the souls of your children. The energy of their slave owner, rapist, pedophile grandfathers claws its way into the innocent souls of their sons and daughters. And no matter how hard they try to break the curse, unless the karma is burned, transmuted, the debt is paid, the karma will keep cycling through. You think the Jews gave a fuck about the Nuremberg trials after the Holocaust on any real level? The lives had been lost, the harm had been done, but that shit saved Germans' souls. Look at Rwanda. In Rwanda, there was a genocide that happened. People killed and maimed their neighbors and their neighbors' children. But they went through a reconciliation process afterwards, and that country, the collective in that country, has turned its energy around in the span of less than one generation, in a few short decades, because they paid their karma through that reconciliation process. I just wish white people could understand that. When I look at the depravity of that collective, all I see is karmic debt being paid from generation to generation, with each next generation feeling more disconnected, more miserable, and more depraved than the last. Reparations is literally a karmic get out of jail free card, but y'all refuse it because you don't want to say sorry. The fact that Black people in America are even willing to accept reparations should be seen as a blessing. Anyways, we're going to continue to descend deeper and deeper into the truth of the karmic debt of slavery in this country until that collective decides to pay its dues and to reconcile. And actually, once that happens, the healing will happen much faster than anyone would expect.
Saw this post pop up the other day, and I see it pop up on pages like this, every couple of years, and it gets people riled up and shit. But this is a hill that I am willing, a very big hill I'm willing to die on. Reparations should have definitely been a day one thing.
The hats they're holding says, "Make America pay reparations." That's what the hat says. I'm going to need one of them hats. For real.
What you're not going to do is sit here and tell me that these shouldn't have been paid out. You mean to tell me that white folks could have gone in these black neighborhoods, completely destroyed their communities, set their houses on fire, destroyed their businesses, took away any chance of building up wealth to pass down to their families, as white people had the opportunity to do that with slave money. Like, you mean to tell me we didn't owe them that much at least? Because we took everything and we destroyed everything for no fucking reason other than being racist fucks. That's it. That was it. There was no reason for us to destroy what they had. We already didn't want them in our neighborhoods. We didn't want them patronizing our stores, but we wanted to pay them low wage to work in our stores. So they break off the white dollar to sustain themselves. And we got pissed off of that and destroyed it and then didn't pay it back. We were so hateful as a race that insurance companies labeled these riots not massacres to avoid legal obligation to pay these families back the money that we took from them. So yes, reparations should have been a day one thing. To say otherwise is indicative of your racism. Whether you want to admit that or not, doesn't fucking matter. I mean, slave owners got paid reparations for freeing, quote unquote, freeing slaves. And we didn't owe them reparations? Y'all stupid.
Every economic problem that we're facing in this country right now, student loan debt being just out of control, the government shutdown, SNAP benefits being cut, health insurance premiums about to go through the roof, your rent going up, your pay stagnating, groceries just being astronomical, is because reparations were never paid after the Civil War. Let me explain. After the Civil War, the Union, the North won and the South was defeated, but the South was never punished. The Confederacy lived on in the ideology of the people, of the white people of the South. Reparations were never paid to Black Americans. They were never really, truly given the opportunity to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, to rise up and become equal members of this country, equal citizens. They've been fighting for their equality since then. They've never actually truly achieved it. So when white people hear a promise from Donald Trump et al. That we're going to run the country like a business, to them, that sounds appealing. They're like, oh yeah, because you know what? I'm a business owner. I own this country because I'm white. When Black and brown people hear, well, we're going to run the country, run the government like a business, they understand what that means because they've been dealing with it for centuries. White people think that they are on the side of the owners, the masters, but they're not. Most white people have more in common with the Black and brown people that they look down upon. They are closer to them in the economic tax bracket than they are to the white billionaires whose asses they kiss. But listen to them glazing billionaires, especially on this app. I make $50,000 a year, but I have more in common with Jeff Bezos than I do with George Floyd. Bullshit. The only reason the lie of let's run this country like a business appealed to you is because you thought you would benefit. And now here you are. Now here you are understanding that when they say we're going to run this country like a business, that means they're going to profit off of your ass. That means that if you take $100,000 loan out to go to college, you will be in debt to the federal government until the day you fucking die. You borrowed 100 grand, prepare to repay 300 grand because they're running the government like a business now. And guess what? You're a customer, not an owner. The government exists to serve us, not to profit off of us. And we will continue to have these problems until y'all get your fucking minds right.
Well, no, white people, I'm not coming to you for shit. I'm going to the United States government for shit because it is the US government that made it legal for your ancestors to buy and own slaves and sell them. So, Mr. White Man, I'm not coming to you for a check. I'm going to the United States government. Thanks.
When white people in the United States balk at the idea of paying reparations to Black Americans who descended from slaves, they disagree with the Bible. Reparations are a form of compensation or restitution made to those who have suffered injustice particularly those in cases of racial inequality, discrimination, and slavery. The idea of paying reparations to Black Americans is not a new one. It has been a topic of discussion for decades, if not centuries. However, it has gained renewed attention and support in recent years, following the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the growing recognition of systemic racism in American society. As a Christian, I believe that reparations are not only a matter of justice and equity, but also a reflection of God's character and values. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of God's concern for the oppressed, the marginalized, and the downtrodden. From the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt to the ministry of Jesus among the poor and the outcast, we see a consistent theme of God's love for those who are on the margins of society. One of the key biblical principles that underlie the idea of reparations is the concept of restitution. In the book of Leviticus, we see God commanding the Israelites to make restitution to those whom they have wronged. Leviticus 6:1-5 says, if anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely in any of all the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery when he got it by oppression or deposit that was committed to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore in full and shall add a fifth to it, and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day that he realizes his guilt. This passage emphasizes the importance of making restitution to those who have been wronged, and not just restoring what was taken, but adding to it as a form of compensation. This principle of restitution can be applied to the issue of reparations to Black Americans who have suffered centuries of enslavement, discrimination, and systemic oppression. Another biblical principle that supports the idea of reparations is the concept of Jubilee. In Leviticus 25, God commands the Israelites to observe a Jubilee every 50th year, during which all debts are forgiven, all slaves to be set free, and all property to be returned to its original owners. This was a radical idea of economic justice designed to prevent the accumulation of wealth and power in the hands of a few, and to ensure that all members of society had equal access to resources and opportunities. The idea of Jubilee can be seen as a model for reparations in that it seeks to address the root causes of inequality and oppression rather than just treating the symptoms. By forgiving debts, freeing slaves, and returning property, Jubilee seeks to create a more just and equitable society, one in which everyone has the opportunity to flourish. As a Christian, I believe paying reparations to Black Americans is only a matter of justice and equity, but also it is a reflection of God's values and character. Through the biblical principles of restitution and Jubilee, we see a model for how we can address the historical and systemic injustices that have plagued our society for far too long. While the issue of reparations is complex and contentious, I believe that as Christians, we have a responsibility to seek justice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Bible is all about restitution. You know, when you read it, it's always talking about restitution in one form or another. So the fact that these folks have not done it, yeah, that's why their judgment is going to be twice as bad. But that's on them. They have sealed their fate all on their own. We sure didn't do it to them or for them. They did this all on their own. So, hey, best of luck, because you sure won't have anybody over here to lean on. You better get through it the best that you can. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my next live at 3:40. Yeah, 3:45 will be on Erica Kirk. I want y'all to hear what she said after the shooting. She went on Turning Point USA, did a live stream, And I just want you to hear what she said. This woman is so weird and so creepy. It is just it is just crazy watching and listening to her. And I'm like, okay, I know Charlie was a hardcore racist, but damn, what did he see? Maybe this was the best thing he ever caught in his life. Maybe that's what it was, you know? But woo, she's really out there for real. All right, y'all. So I will see you then. Have a wonderful afternoon. Shalom, family.